oftentimes I share with the students, everybody wants to do psychedelic journey these days. And I'm like, listen, if you are not cleaning up your diet and getting your body right, your mind is not going to be able to project the images properly. And the analogy would be like back in the day when I grew up, we had bunny ears, like little antennas on top of our TV. And when you change the channel, you had to change the ears, to get the right signal. So if you don't have a clear antenna, which is a healthy body, that's going to scramble it up and you're not going to see a good signal. So you're thinking you see what you're seeing, but you're not.
In a world moving faster than our minds were designed to handle, mental health is becoming one of the defining challenges of our time. Welcome to Mental Health in a Modern World with holistic health practitioner Greg Schmaus. After overcoming severe anxiety and OCD in his own life, Greg dedicated the past decade to helping others heal through a fully integrated approach to mental health, combining lifestyle coaching, psycho-emotional healing, mindfulness, and archetypal work. Over the years, he's facilitated thousands of sessions, guiding people back to peace, clarity, and a deeper connection with themselves. Each week, Greg shares powerful solo insights, conversations with leading voices in holistic healing, and immersive live coaching sessions that take you inside the healing process itself. New episodes every Friday. Follow the show and start reclaiming sovereignty over your mind in a modern world. Here's Greg.
So Angie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited. So for any of my listeners that aren't yet aware of your work, I'd love for you to just share a little bit of your background and how you got into the field of holistic health and a lot of what you've been up to recently.
Okay, well, that's a big question because it probably started when I was just a little girl. I was like 6 months old and I was diagnosed with croup. And so I had this whooping cough and, first they didn't know what it was from. And then they said, well, she just has croup. And because of that diagnosis, as you would call it, my whole life I've been trying to figure out why my lungs weren't working properly. My brother was this really healthy kid and I was the sick kid all the time. The weather changed, I couldn't breathe. And I was always home from school. I was the kid that loved school. My brother hated school. I was the one who had to stay home because had these ailments. And I just started getting into the health industry real early because I started reading about nutrition and health at a young age. Like my favorite book as a kid was the Medical Encyclopedia because I was trying to figure out, well, what's going on with my body? What am I feeling? What's happening? And then I started reading about herbs and trying to figure out what herbs could help me. And so that's kind of like paved the way from where I'm at now. So I became a biology major at the University of California, Riverside. And then I went on to get my nutrition degree. Along the way, I also became a personal trainer because I wanted to learn how to take care of my body and then help others take care of theirs. And that led me to Paul's work with the Czech Institute. And now I'm a holistic lifestyle coach, a teacher to teach coaches how to be coaches. And in that, I also delved into all these other modalities. I learned about shamanism. I'm a 3-year advanced trained shamanic practitioner through Michael Harner's work. I went into energy medicine, and now I'm really deep into biogeometry.
Yeah, it seems like it's a pretty common theme that our early childhood experiences or our own personal healing journey kind of sets the stage for a lot of our purpose or our mission in this work. How, especially in shamanism, they talk about the initiations that you go through. It sounds like you had your initiation quite early on.
Yeah, right on. And that's exactly right. And I teach that in my holistic lifestyle classes. I teach that our pain is actually there to guide us in a direction in which we're supposed to go. So if someone just takes your pain away, you might be missing the message. And so my pain made me interested in nutrition and health.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'd love to get into biogeometry. I know this has been a huge passion of yours recently, and it's something that's really interested me. So I'd love for you to just give us, to start, just a brief overview of what biogeometry is.
Okay, so biogeometry, the way I like to explain it is that it's a relatively new science based on old Egyptian techniques. And so it was founded by Dr. Ibrahim Karim. He's still alive in his 80s. And his background is he's an architect and he's Egyptian. And so his big thing was, how did they harness this energy, this healing energy in pyramids? And he was wondering how he could harness that energy to create homes for people, like apartment complexes that would actually benefit the people living in it. In his quest, put him all over the world where he was looking at sacred sites to figure out what it is that made these sites healing sites. And he detected 3 energies there. And so we call them BG3, like biogeometry 3. And so it's the higher harmonics of ultraviolet, the higher harmonics of gold, and also it's also called horizontal negative green. I'm sorry, horizontal negative green. Yes, there's vertical and negative. I had to make sure I was telling the right one. So horizontal, negative green, gold, and ultraviolet. These three colors come together. And when those three colors come together, they enhance not only human life, but all sentient beings. So all things at the cellular level, plants, animals, everything has a benefit from these three light colors coming together.
So is the technology of biogeometry taking the electromagnetic field of an environment and organizing the energy within it? Like, is it creating just a greater sense of coherence?
So what it's doing is actually transmuting it into energy that is actually healing versus damaging to the body.
And would you say that, because the show is mental health in a modern world, our modern world is filled with so many disruptive energies from non-native EMFs to a lot of pollution. So I'm curious if you feel like this technology is probably more essential now than ever, just given a
100%.
lot of the energetics of our environment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons I got into it, because I was of that mindset. Let's blow up the 5G towers, now 6G towers, and it's like, how do we get rid of these? And when I started listening to Dr. Kareem, he had this more gentle approach. He's like, no, this is modern science. How can we learn to work with it? So by simple techniques, simple solutions, we can change that energy coming out of the cell phone towers and create it into a harmonizing energy. And that's when I was interested. I'm like, well, let's see how we can do that, because that's way more yin, and exploding things is just violence with violence. So it's like, how can we change this and alter it? And his work, originally started in Hamburg, Switzerland. And that's how he was actually commissioned to change the 5G towers. They were practicing it a long time ago. And they said, hey, these 5G towers are causing people to get cancer, tinnitus, it's hurting the animals. And so Dr. Kareem's answer was like, well, if you know what's causing the problem, why don't you just get rid of the problem? They're like, yeah, we can't do that. But we know you can fix it. And he's like, yeah, I can. So he went out there and he altered them with his solutions. He made these Hamburg emitters and he put these solutions pointed at the 5G towers. And sure enough, within seconds of getting the solution corrected, people noticed that my ears aren't ringing anymore. And then shortly after, weeks later, people who had cancer, the cancers were going into remission. There was leukemia in the animals, and the leukemia was now disappearing. And like, well, this is crazy. And at first they said, oh, it's just placebo effect. That does things like we believe it, so therefore it's working. And he says, well, there's no placebo effect on animals. So he started doing more research on animals and showing the fact they don't know. He was like, unless they speak, I forgot what language they were speaking. He's like, unless they speak the language, then they wouldn't know what we're doing. So we saw that the animals were actually getting healthier.
Wow. So obviously there's been, for many, many years, a whole field of grounding. We go outside, we get barefoot on the earth, we expose ourselves to the Schumann resonance, and it lowers inflammation and things like that. So is this kind of taking some of that technology just to a whole nother level?
I think there's so many different modalities. I think there's many ways to heal a person. And so I think they're all pointing in the same direction where, recognizing that we're energetic beings
Yeah.
and recognizing that we have to concentrate on the human being as a whole and energetically working on us. And that's why he created the biosignatures. And the biosignatures are a specific branch of biogeometry that works on balancing the energy in our organ systems and specific body parts so that they can become healed again. The way I like to explain that is, you think about energy and it's like we're getting scrambled by these 5G towers, microwave ovens, and even chemicals, and things, additives and things they put in our food. It scrambles our energetic field. And then our body goes, well, what's the optimal way to go through my liver? Or what's the optimal way to go through my lungs? And doesn't remember that optimal way. So it creates a new pathway. And over time, that leads to disease. And so when you understand these signatures that he's created, when you place those signatures directly on your skin, you could draw them on yourself or create an emitter, which I do with paper emitters with a picture of the person. It sends that energy back to the person to remind them of the optimal balance and how the energy goes through these organs. And as soon as your body picks it up, it's like, yes, that's the right way. And immediately we see healing start to take place.
Mm. So part of it, you're using certain symbols. Is that correct?
They're called biosignatures. And
Mhm.
Dr. Cream, during his quest of and finding information about the pyramids, he was given these ancient scrolls. They were actually at the library in Cairo. And they said, we need to entrust you with these. And there was these very ancient scrolls. And in that scrolls, there was information about these signatures that were used in that ancient times. And so he learned about them and he was able to start creating his own based on the information in the scrolls. And now he's has over 158 of these signatures for the body.
It almost sounds like a language.
It really is, and it's interesting because you say that because I've been working with them for almost 7 years now.
Mhm.
And I have created a book, and I'm not publishing it publicly because I don't want it to interfere with the Dr. Crean's book. He had the biosignature
Mhm.
book. In his book, he just shows lungs 1, lungs 2, lungs 3, without any information about it. And I wanted to know more about the signatures, so I actually started asking my clients questions like, "Tell me about your heart condition. Tell me about what's going on with your lungs." And I would write notes. I'm like, "Oh, this signature is supporting this condition." And over
Mhm.
time, I have information not only on the physical level, but the mental, emotional level as well. So someone might have a negative thought that's creating destruction in an organ. And so I
Mhm.
write all this information down, and that helps me figure out what signatures are needed and why they're needed. And so it's a language. And so that came very strongly. Just like a week ago, I was working on this high profile case. And what came to me is I'm using the signatures, and it's a language for me to connect to like different dimensions. Just like someone might
Yes.
tarot and get information. Well, they have developed a language with those cards. This card to me means this. This card to me means that. And when those cards show up, it's like, oh, I need to tell this person about this because this card showed up with this meaning. And
Mhm.
now it's a language for when those signatures show up. It's like, yes, this signature is going to tell me to tell them to look this in this direction.
It's funny because when I was exploring what I wanted to talk to you about, the two things that came up were biogeometry and shamanism. And what I'm starting to hear is that they're not separate. It's almost like biogeometry is a form of shamanism because these symbols, like when I've worked with symbols in the past, they almost appear as entities, almost like energetic beings that carry consciousness that you can work with to create healing, which is shamanism. And so
100.
I'm curious if you've kind of explored like that shamanism and biogeometry, there's a bridge between the two that they're not so separate.
Yeah, and I think I like all these healing modalities, they're all ways of tapping into the unconscious, and I think that, whether you, like I said, whatever modality you use, ruin, stone, you know, divination of some kind, all of that is connected. And if you're listening, like I even speak with animals, and so animals show up in my field and always giving me messages and warning. Like even yesterday, I was driving home with the kids and bringing them home from school, and this hawk comes diving down in front of my windshield and was away. I'm like, well, that was a message for me about the hawk. The hawk tells me to pay attention, look around. I thought, okay, what do I need to be aware? So I immediately looked at my speed. Am I driving too fast? Let me slow down. Maybe something's going to be on the road, and it just gives me that warning. So it's like a heads up. Don't drive fast. Something's happening. But it wasn't on the road. It was when I got home. I parked the car. We got out of the car, and the kids came out of the car, and Zoe starts to scream. This is just yesterday. And there was a big
Mhm.
snake right on our driveway. And so it was like the hawk was saying, hey, be aware of your surroundings. Thankfully it was just a garden snake, but we have a lot of rattlesnakes. So
Mhm.
I immediately thought rattlesnake bust in the house. I said, well, you did everything right. You got away from the snake. That's what you want to do. But the hawk was there to say, hey, pay attention. There's stuff in your field. And so
Yeah.
shamanism's alive and well in all these modalities. And it's a great way to connect. So whichever way, a person wants to connect is valid. And the more you do
Yeah.
it, it strengthens the language.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm really curious about, because I've experienced this in my own life, is, in the Czech Institute, we explore a lot of, parasite infections, fungal infections, the microbiome, how all of these organisms have a huge impact on our health, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally. And something that I've been exploring recently is how different organisms vibrate at different frequencies and how whatever mental emotional state we're in, if we're in resonance with a certain organism, we might be more susceptible to, let's say, a fungal infection. Like I have felt people that have stagnation in their life. They're more susceptible to fungal infections or mold. Or if someone has a lot of suppressed anger, they might be more susceptible to like a shingles virus or some other organism. And so I'm curious whether it's in biogeometry or just in your own work, if you've explored the connection between some of these chronic infections and how these organisms vibrate at certain frequencies, and whether biogeometry is something that you use to kind of help clear things like that.
Yeah, 100%. Because when I'm looking at biogeometry signatures, I dived into people's mental emotional state and to say, what is their dominant thought? And this is could create this problem. And so this signature is going to help balance. What also comes to mind is like Louise Hay's work, You Can Heal Your
Mhm.
Life, her book. And she talks about how we have this auric field. And when we have negative thoughts, you're actually burrowing a hole through your energetic field, which allows things to enter into your body. And that's why if a doctor's working with all these patients, they don't get sick because they don't have those negative thoughts. So their auric field is impenetrable. But as soon as we start having stinking thinking of any description, certain holes will show up in your field, and that's where that energy leaks in. And what you said about the everything has its own vibration, it's true. I used to, in my office, carry this machine called a biomeridian machine. I don't use it anymore, but I did for years. And basically, you could detect what's in a person's body energetically through the meridian points on their fingers and toes. And so I'd use it a lot for parasites, and say, okay, what's going on? So it's non-invasive, it's electrical impulse. And it would go to like the liver, and you could test and you would send signals and it would do it that it was a blind thing. So you couldn't see what's happening on the screen. It was just these boxes and it'd go da-dee, 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 da-dee. And what happens is if it's something your body's been exposed to, it will react to that energy. But if it's something it's never been exposed to, there's no impetus to stop it. So there's no reaction. So the current goes through and no response, goes through, no response. But when there is something like a parasite in your body, it'll go ba-ding, and it'll pop up and say, this parasite, this specific parasite is in a person. And that was valuable information because now I'm like, okay, now I can look up the life cycle of this parasite and learn about it and know how to get rid of it in a person's body. All of that is tied together and emotions. And I love that, how you've worked in thinking about diseases or mold and funguses and how they're affecting. Because, yeah, that's more information that needs to be exposed because people don't put that correlation about why they're getting that. And, yeah, maybe there's stagnation that is creating this fungus to appear.
Obviously, in our modern day world, the amount of technology and social media and screen time and all the things that we're exposed to now on a daily basis, my big focus, especially on the show, is mental health. And so, levels of anxiety, depression, ADHD, OCD, all of these mental illnesses are just skyrocketing. And so I'm curious how you've seen biogeometry become a huge asset in terms of people's mental health, especially kind of in this world of constant stimulation.
Yes. So Dr. Kareem has a whole bunch of signatures for general stress. And in that, there's a 4-part series that he's created, and it's for anxiety, nervousness, tension in the body, and so depression. And I find that those are extremely effective for people today. In fact, I had a psychologist actually hire me because he was depressed and he was on 3 different antidepressants. And he was like, I've heard about this biogeometry. Can you help me with that? And I said, well, let's try. And sure enough, he had a couple signatures that he needed. And he reported back that in 20 minutes, he felt significantly better. He was to the point where he was not even working because he was so depressed that he couldn't get out of bed. And when we applied the signatures, he was like, I've noticed improvement. And he slowly started taking himself off the medication because he's the one who put him off the medication. And he got to the point where he did not need the medication anymore, which was pretty powerful, and I know the medical companies do not want to hear that. And if I said that, they probably want to burn me. But there is a lot of stuff coming out now that says, hey, maybe, just maybe, like I was just on social media this morning and this mother was talking about how they wanted to put her kid on Ritalin. And she found out that saffron had some significant effects on a child and calming effect, helping with clarity of mind and focus. And she was able to just do saffron for her child. And the teacher's like, wow, he's doing amazing. What drug did you choose? And she's like, I didn't choose any drug. And I think that's the message we need to go to. Instead of quickly going to the drug, there's a time and a place for medication, but shouldn't be the first step. It's like, let's try some of these natural things,
Yeah.
biogeometry for sure. I mean, that's just a signature. And once you know which signature, you can draw it on your skin yourself, and it doesn't cost you any more money. It's like you have it and it's yours, and so why not? Wouldn't you try something gentle like that that's harmonizing the body versus, yes, this is giving me the desired effects, but I'm getting all these side effects too. So
Yeah. What I love about this is how, mostly people are focusing just on healing like the individual body, the individual mind. But it seems like this really emphasizes how the body, mind, and environment are all one, that you can't separate the two. We know you can't separate the body and the mind, but you also can't separate the body, mind, and the environment. Like Gabor Mate talks about it being biopsychosocial, where
mhm.
social being the environment. I think it's biopsychosocial spiritual. So I think there's four there. Um, and so if people were wanting to just get started, like just cracking the door open to biogeometry, what would you recommend for people as just like a starting point or an entry point?
Well, for sure, they can start with his books. Dr. Cream has written 3 books. His most recent book, Hidden Reality, is a pretty deep dive, so it might be a little overwhelming at first, but his Biosignatures or his Future for Mankind, those are his original books. Those would be a good starting point. And if you're really wanting to dive in, you can do the foundation training. The foundation training can be done online, so you just have to find a week where they're doing that and just book out your schedule for just learning about biogeometry. It will change your life. And I'd say those would be a good starting point for them.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for that. And we'll link all of that in the show notes.
There is
Uh,
a code. It's check 75 for discounts off the foundation training.
oh, perfect.
Or they can try using that code to get the discount, but at least get something off that.
Awesome. So we'll have that linked for everyone. I'd love to get into shamanism. I know this is another one of your big passions, because obviously shamanism's becoming almost like a hot topic recently. But most people, when they hear about shamanism, they think about plant medicine and psychedelics. They think about going to the Amazon, drinking ayahuasca. And obviously, plant medicine is a beautiful tool and it's a big aspect of shamanism. But there's also a whole field of shamanism outside of psychedelics, which I know you do a lot of work around. And so I'd love to dive into more of the non-psychedelic based shamanic practices. And because I think that's very overlooked
Yeah.
kind of in where shamanism is going right now. So I'd love to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So when I did my 3-year advanced training, there was no psychedelics in that course. And so you learn about the basic shamanism, the foundation of shamanism. And it's shamanism.org if someone's interested in looking into that. And I actually found so much value in this because one of the first things that ever happened to me when I was going into this work. So what happened is I was on my life path of learning things, in this book, The Way of the Shaman, just kind of appeared into my life. And I was like, wow, what's this? And it was by Michael Harner. And so it's just like a little book. And in it, it's like actual exercises and things to do as well. So when I got this book, I didn't just read it. I actually studied it. And I would stop and actually do the exercise that he required. And on their website, they actually have downloadable drums so you can hear the right drum beat. So the work is done with the right drum. And that gets you into this deep, like, theta state, and where you can go, it's venture on. And so it's powerful. And if you get a really good drummer, you can go really far places. Yeah, if your drummer is not always on point, it's not very deep because it's like the beat keeps on changing. So if you can get someone to do a steady beat for you for 30 minutes or even 15 minutes, it can take you on these wild rides. So I remember studying this book and getting so excited, and then found out that he had a weekend course called The Way of the Shaman. And it was in San Francisco. And I was a young girl at the time. And I'm like, I'm going. So here I was, like, probably in my 20s. And I was like, we're booking this ticket. I'm going to San Francisco. I'm going to stay in this hotel. I'm going to take this course. This is what I'm going to do. And it was one of those magical, magical weekends where I remember they had a really good drummer. And they said, okay, we're going to go to the lower world. So they explained how to go to the lower world and see a power animal. And so it was a 15-minute only thing, or you're supposed to just go in, identify an animal there, and then come back. Well, I was just like the fool, like the tarot card, like, oh, I'm just going to go this. But I had been doing meditation for over 2-3 years by then. And I was really good at stilling my mind. I think that's the key to this work. If your mind is too buzzy, you're not going to be able to still and decipher all these messages. And I was just like, do. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, I'm in this field. And all of a sudden it was like, I got grabbed by my shoulders by this giant raven and flies me up into this forest and drops me in this nest. And I could feel my heart on the ground in that room beating, but I wasn't in that body anymore. So it was like part of me sensed my body's vitals there, but I was literally in this nest. And I was having this surreal experience. Like I remember the wind blowing through my hair. I could feel the sensation of something grabbing and picking me up, and that feeling of getting off the ground and kind of scared of the height, and then landing in this nest and going, where the hell am I? And then this raven was feeding me like a worm, and then a mushroom, and then an herb, and then this combination molded me into this raven. And I was just like, so this is like being on a psychedelic journey without any drugs, right? And it was like, and I'm like, holy moly. And I'm looking at myself and I'm like, I'm a freaking raven right now, right? And the raven just looks at me like, come on, let's go. And so I started flying with this raven, and it would bring me down into these different sites. It was like, at first it was like I realized there were tribes doing ritual, shamanic, whatever things. And the first one, it was just like, oh, they were kind of like, almost like church. Like they were sitting and praying and kneeling and praying and thinking. And the raven looked at me like, you got that? I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. So we flew again. I went to another tribe, and their stature started to get shorter, and their teeth got a little more fang-like, and the ritual got a little bit more primal. Like all of a sudden I start seeing them sacrificing animals and stuff. And it was like, but I got it. It was like, okay, we have kind of candy-assed our rituals to the point where they don't mean anything to people, or they don't bring them into the now. They're not centering them. And so it doesn't mean you have to kill an animal to do that, but that's how they did it back in the day. And it was like, when something is losing its life, you are fully focused on that. There's nothing else. You're not thinking about watching TV or your next bill you have to pay. You're like focused. And so what happened when it kept on flying, I realized the sun was going, instead of east to west, it was going west to east. So it was going back in time. And I was going back, and all of a sudden, all the way to the time where it was like the ice ages. And there was this tribe. And here I am, I'm flying, and I'm hiding out in these trees with this raven. But at the last scene, we're these big black birds in this tree of snow, right? And the chief looks up and goes, oh, we've been blessed with some astral travelers right now. And I'm like, dude, of course he can see us with big white black birds in a big white tree, And he said, could you please come down and show us where you've come from? And I'm like, oh, okay. So as I came down, I molted back into my human form, and I brought my arms out, extended them out like a T. And I became this projector where everything in my life just shot out of me, and they were watching video. I remember they were just like a video. It was like they were just seeing my life. I even saw like 9/11 come out of me, like things that I had been exposed to that even though I wasn't directly within my field. And then I put my hands down, and he said, thank you. And then he handed me this white stone and said, and when it's your turn, we'll be there with you, because I was in his lifetime. And I said, thank you. And then they had the callback. And so I explained all this to my teacher, and my teacher was like, oh, well, let's not try to be like Angie. And I felt almost embarrassed at that point, because I realized I had done so much work to get to that beginner level that I was already doing some advanced work. And that's when I realized this is my calling. I need to do this, because not everybody had that experience. They weren't meditating. They didn't study the book. They showed up for this class, and they were like, oh, I think I see an ear. I think I see a nose. I think I see this tail. And they weren't getting clear images. And that's when I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. And that's what brought me in. So that to me was so profound that it was, if I was on psychedelics, I'd be like, oh, it's the drugs talking, I was high and I thought I was a raven, cool. But when you're stone sober and those things happen to you, you can't even fathom it. You can't wrap your head around it. You can't say it was just the drug talking. It's like, this is proof of shamanism, and this is the power of shamanism. And that's what got me into the studying. I'm like, I have to continue this path.
I'm a big fan of the proper use of plant medicine and psychedelics. But as I've done my own shamanic training, for me, it's always felt essential to be able to access those states, those dimensions, and those realms without consuming anything. It's almost like if I can't get there without it, a part of me almost feels like a fraud a little bit. Almost like I'm still riding a bike with training wheels, but I haven't really learned how to ride the bike.
That's good. And
And so I'm wondering if you also feel like it's important that if someone wants to explore the realm of shamanism, that they really go through non-medicine type initiations. This sounds like an initiation.
yeah, 100%. And that's exactly what the 3-year advanced training is. We went through initiation after initiation. Some of the things I'm not allowed to talk about because they were so profound and they want to wait till you're a student. But things where it just, I was like trying to figure out how in the world did that just happen? Like, and then you realize, no, when you call on spirit, spirit comes. And if you're willing, it can actually help you. It can heal you. It can move you. There's so much power in this dimension. And yeah, it's mind blowing, and we kind of just regard it as like, oh, that's this old ancient thing. And those are such primitive people. And now we have advanced technologies and science. But wow, there is so much power. And I was grateful to have a really good teachers and see some really
Yeah.
things. And, in regards to psychedelics can show you those areas. And sometimes in a way, I was like, okay, I can use that to get to that point, but then learning how to use your mind to get there and not having to use it. And like you said,
Yeah.
that can be a tool to jumpstart you into seeing things that you aren't able to see before. But ultimately, the real work is when you're not on those drugs and when you're doing these things sober and able to access all these planes.
Yeah. I remember hearing once that Ram Dass's teacher, Maharaji, would say to Ram Dass, if you use psychedelics, you can enter the room with Buddha and Christ, but you can only stay for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And that's always been in the back of my mind of, okay, these are beautiful medicines, but it's only a temporary stay.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you learn how to do it with your mind without anything, you can enter at any time and stay as long as you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really the work I do with people. And like I work even remotely and I can tap into these areas. I do a lot of work where I talk to deceased relatives as well. And I love that kind of work because it's valid. Like, and they know it's valid because they know the relatives and I don't. And when I start saying things the relatives used to say, then they're like, well, how the hell would Angie know that? Or they tell me something and I have to go look at this and then they do it and they're like, yeah, that was valid. That's why I love it. And like, I love having work where people can back it up and there's no way Angie would know that. And that's when you know.
Yeah.
It.
And life becomes so much more magical.
Yeah. And that's why I teach nature divination as well. And it's like nature, plant, animal, they're always talking to you. And if you listen, it will enhance your life. I tell people that when you work with nature and animal, you're never alone. In today's day and age, I feel most people are lonely. They don't feel they're connected. Get out in the nature and connect your feet on the ground and start listening to the birds or the messages they have, the messages in the trees. And it's like life becomes so magical. And like I live my whole life that way. I'm always looking out my windows, thinking what animals are coming to me to share a message with me because it's going to enhance my life in some way.
Yeah. I would love for you to just break down briefly. In shamanism, there's the lower world, middle world, and upper worlds. And in shamanism, we do various practices to travel to those dimensions. Would you be open to just sharing a little kind of summary? Give us a little kind of tour of what the lower worlds, middle worlds, and upper world are in shamanism.
Yeah, for sure. So upper world is kind of, the way we see, like people always say, I'm going to go to heaven. Heaven is kind of like the upper world. Upper world, when I see it, very angelic realm. Angels, saints. For me, it feels very sterile and like that realm of white light and everything. The lower world is not hell. In fact, I enjoy the lower world more. It's more jungle and vegetation, nature, animals. I'm like, oh, put me in the jungle, man. This is great. And so people can reside in the upper world, lower world. And you don't have to decide when you die, oh, I'm going to go to the upper world and you're stuck there. It's kind of like being born in California. Well, I can decide to go to Canada and visit you. It's like, you're not getting stuck there. This is where your destination is at the beginning, but you can travel. So if you're upper world, sure, go to the lower world. So that's typically where we go, upper and lower. And the middle world is where we're at now. So we are living our life in the middle world. But what happens is when someone dies unexpectedly, then they get stuck in the middle world. And that's why you'll see ghosts, because they're not aware that they actually died. So they're still living their life, but they're not fully present. So they'll see them in that middle world. So a lot of psychopomp work that was done in a lot of religions was to remove your relatives from the middle world and release their souls so they could go back into their, well, they would already heaven, but to the other worlds. And so that's kind of the three designations. And so you can work at any of these three levels. And typically the middle world, when you're talking to people, like if I energetically see people, sometimes they're good people, sometimes they're lost souls because they're just walking earth still and they don't know what to do or where to go or why they're even there. And so you can find a lot of strange beings in that realm. When you go to places, like if someone has that psychic ability to declare sentience and they feel things, they might get a lot of chills, or you might go to like a haunted house or a place where something has been bombed, Pearl Harbor or something. And you go to travel to these places where a lot of people had died, you'll usually feel those souls still there. And I immediately will know when I'm in a place that's haunted because I'm like, oh, their soul's still here. And you can feel them still lingering around, doing their thing, sometimes minding their business, sometimes not, and so that's kind of the distinction between those realms.
Yeah. One thing I notice when their soul's stuck in the middle world is when you pass by them, there's a big change in temperature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
yes, often.
Almost like it drops, like it gets cooler.
Yeah. In fact, just recently we had a cat die. A couple weeks ago, it got killed by a coyote, and this was her Ash, and she was this badass cat. And Paul really liked her, and she started getting really comfortable with Paul's office, and that was kind of funny because Paul's not really an animal person, but he was adopting Ash to stay in his office. But at night, she was just had this free spirit she wanted to hunt, and apparently one night was that she got attacked by a bunch of coyotes and didn't make it. But because she was such a bad, I don't think she realized she died. And so, but energetically, I'm connected to all my animals. So I didn't hear the coyotes that night, but that morning I woke up and went, where's Ash? Like I knew, even though she's not always in the house, I knew something up. And when I was like, oh, my son's like, I just saw her. I'm like, no, you didn't. Something's up. And so I mentioned to Paul, have you seen Ash? She goes, no, but I did hear coyotes this morning and they were making that sound like they caught something. I'm like, I think it was Ash. And so the very next morning, I was walking over to Paul's office, and sometimes we get up early, so we're with the flashlight. And I saw this apparition, which I'd never seen before. It was like a light being of a cat through my flashlight. And I went, but it wasn't a fully figured cat, but it was moving like a cat. And I'm like, oh, that's Ash. And then when I opened the door, I could feel it go into his office space with me. And so I was in there turning on everything for Paul, and all of a sudden I even heard a cat. And I'm like, and it was so real but then I do talk to the other side a lot, so I hear voices just like they're here, and I'm like, that's a cat. And I'm like, wait a minute, maybe she's stuck in a closet in here, maybe she got stuck in the library. So I went in the library, opened up the closets, and there was none. I'm like, and then Paul came in afterwards and we're talking, and he has the ability to see as well, and we were sitting there and he was having this espresso, I was having my tea, and we both looked down and we went like this, and we both energetically saw this cat run past us. And so, yeah, so these animals can also be in the spirit world, just like you would see a human. If they were in that house before, they could be still washing their dishes, and we'd be like, what if we see this person here? Yeah.
Yes, it's interesting that you and I are having this podcast today because my great Pyrenees passed away about 4 days ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And she was actually quite young. She was only 4.
Oh, no.
And she and I were very close, but even the next day I was able to really connect with her in the spirit worlds. And so I really feel like these, I don't want to say abilities because they're actually skills that you can develop. A lot of people think that these are just talents or gifts that some people have, but others don't. But I truly believe that we can all develop them, because what we're really doing is we're accessing just almost like another radio station, like another frequency. And it's not like they're out there and we're here. It's just like another click of frequency that you're tuning into, which we can all do it almost like we're an antenna system picking up different kind of radio waves. And so would you say shamanism is very much building a bridge between worlds?
Yes, definitely. That's what you're doing. You're strengthening. It's kind of like the analogy I like to give people is like if you go to the gym, you're not going to initially pick up the 100-pound dumbbells and start slinging those around. You're going to start with like the 10-pound dumbbells and then graduate to 20s and 30s. And over time, you'll be able to lift some really heavy stuff. So I said, when people are trying to learn how to do this, start gently. Start with little things. Use your intuition more. Connect with that. See if you're getting insights. Listen to your hunches, and that sort of thing. Over time, you're going to develop a muscle, an energetic muscle that can allow you to start seeing. Some people do better with seeing, some are hearing, some are feeling, and then start developing that. But it's not something that, oh, I wasn't born with that gift. No, everybody has the ability to do this. They just don't. And so they've never used it. They've never gone to the gym. They can't lift a weight. But over time, and I find that the more you practice, the more the helping spirits want to hang out with you. Now, if you
Hmm.
were on the other side and you were a helping spirit, would you hang out with someone who doesn't practice? No, that'd be a waste of your time. But if all of us are like, oh, look at this Angie girl, she's doing all these things every single week. Let's hang out with her. There's some excitement there. These people are wanting to get
Yeah.
this done. And so you're fine that you develop a relationship and they want to help you because you're helping them. And so their energy's working through you. And I always tell that to people, it's not me doing the work. It's the helping spirits working through me. And as
Yeah.
soon as people get cocky and says it's they're doing the healing, that's when they stop. They're, you're doing it? Go ahead, girl. We'll sit back and watch you do it. And then you're like, I'm not getting results anymore. So you have to, and,
Hmm.
and that's like when I went to school for my shamanic training, at the end of the 3-year program, they didn't give me a diploma and hang it on my wall. They said, we're not giving diplomas because it's up to the community to decide if you're a shaman. So you can call yourself a shamanic practitioner. I mean, I am practicing shamanism, but only the community can call you a shaman. And that's through proof. And that title can be gone any day based on how you're acting. So you have to be humble. You have to be open to recognizing it's not you, it's something through you. And the minute you start thinking it's ego and you, then they walk away and go, you're on your own fish, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I love about shamanism. It's the relationship. It's like your friend. If you don't call your friend up all the time, then when you call them, there's nothing to talk about because you don't know them anymore. But if you hang out with them, you get to know them. You can have deep conversations because you've developed that relationship.
Yeah, that's beautiful. One thing I'd love for you to speak towards, because you're the head instructor for holistic lifestyle coach at the Czech Institute. And so you teach a lot about the 4 doctors, 6 foundation principles. And one thing I'd love for you to speak towards is, when we're talking about these skills of shamanism and connecting with other realms, higher dimensions, and working with spirits, a lot of it, from my experience, is the healthier we become, the more of a clear vessel we can be for some of this work. And the healthier we are, it's like the clearer the signal becomes.
Yes.
Whereas the body gets unhealthy, more toxic, it's almost like the windshield of the car becomes dirty and cloudy and you can't see clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love for you to speak to really the importance of 4 doctors, 6 foundation principles to clear the lens so you can become that vessel with clear sight.
Yeah, no, that's great because oftentimes I share with the students, everybody wants to do psychedelic journey these days. And I'm like, listen, if you are not cleaning up your diet and getting your body right, your mind is not going to be able to project the images properly. And the analogy would be like back in the day when I grew up, we had bunny ears, like little antennas on top of our TV. And when you change the channel, you had to change the ears, to get the right signal. So if you don't have a clear antenna, which is a healthy body, that's going to scramble it up and you're not going to see a good signal. So you're thinking you see what you're seeing, but you're not. And those images get very scary. So oftentimes people have really bad trips because they're like, oh, there's demons were trying to attack me and stuff. I'm like, you couldn't see what really was there. So get yourself clean so that you can actually have a clean screen so you can see what's really being told to you. So yeah, so the 4 doctors, if your listeners don't know who the 4 doctors, Dr. Happy, getting your mind right. What makes you happy? Having a dream in life. Dr. Movement, moving your body. We're human beings and we have to move our body. We have a physical form. So it doesn't mean lots of exercise. 20, 30 minutes a day can probably do it for most, but most people don't even get that. So moving the body. Dr. Diet, eating the right food for you. And through our training, we tell you what to help you with questionnaires to figure out what's the right diet for you. Because nowadays, it's like, well, should I eat this way? High protein, low carb, low fat, vegan, vegetarian, paleo, it goes on and on and on. It's like, well, what's right for me? So we have questionnaires to say, how do I feel the best? And without those questionnaires, you can still do it. It just takes a little longer, but you have to be, aware. And I tell people, get a journal and write down what you eat. And then 20 minutes later, write down how you feel. You will know in 20 minutes if that food made you feel better or worse. If you're feeling tired, you probably ate the wrong food. If you've got lots of energy and you feel balanced, that's a great food. If you're feeling overly zinging, that's the wrong food as well. It's right in the middle. And so Dr. Diet's important. Then Dr. Quiet. Dr. Quiet is getting enough rest. So many people are like, oh, I only have to sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. But that's when we do our healing, our body recovering. So if there's an injury in the body or you're fighting off an infection or something, you need to heal. Not only just physical healing, but psychological healing. And if those things aren't taken care of at the nighttime, it's like having, like you said, dirty screens. It's like, what's his name? There's a doctor that talks about the glial cells in the brain. And he says that glial cells need to be cleaned every night. And if you don't get enough sleep, they get dirty. And then now you can't think straight. You're foggy in the mind. And so all we need to do is sleep, and it's free. But yet people are deciding that it's not important because they're not making money at that time. We talk about the 4 doctors and then extend into the 6 foundation principles, which you mentioned, and which is thinking, breathing. So if you're not breathing right, there's several things that are going on. You might be eating too much sugar. You might be under too much stress. So figure out, why are you breathing too fast? Some people breathe too slow, not really participating in life. And then we have eating and drinking. So ideally it's drinking water, clear food. Like I have herbal tea I drink, but I also have spring water here next to me. And I'm always making sure I've got enough hydration. You know, they say our body's over 70% water. And if you're not getting enough water, your body can't function. They say there's over 600 billion biochemical reactions going on per second in your body that are all water dependent. And some people I talk to say, I don't drink water. I'm like, what do you drink? Coffee and tea, soda? And I always ask them, well, when you wash your clothes, do you put water in your washing machine? Yeah. You don't put Coke in there? Your coffee? No, that wouldn't make my clothes clean. I'm like, exactly. When you do your dishes, do you wash them in soda? No, that'd make them sticky. Well, then why are you washing your body in soda? I think it's Mark Hyman says, the pollution to pollution's dilution. So drinking more water to dilute the toxins that we're constantly being exposed to. So food, getting organic, good quality food, get the best food you can with the less human intervention, right? And it's like, we're always trying to splice things, make it bigger, better, tastier. And let's just get natural foods back in our body. And then sleep, so movement and sleep, those are those 6 foundation principles. And if you're not getting those, you're out of balance. And as you said, when you're out of balance, your mind and your body are one. And so if your body's sick, so is your mind. And then when you're trying to see in these dimensions, you're not going to see clearly, or you're not going to feel like you can do it at all, or you can't stay focused enough to actually get the message.
Yeah. Obviously in conventional Western medicine, there's a lot of, we say putting the cart before the horse, prescribing meds before diet, exercise, sleep. But also in the plant medicine world, there's a little bit of putting the cart before the horse, of doing deep medicine journeys before just a 20-minute working in practice or a 20-minute meditation practice. So I love how you and Paul, even though you teach shamanism and you teach all of these beautiful skills, you always set the foundation first. And you kind of make sure the 4 doctors, almost like 4 legs of a table, are set first, and then everything else is kind of built on top of that.
Right. Yeah. And it's amazing how the mind, it's like when you start looking at the body, it always comes to the mind. It's the mind is balanced, the body heals. It's when we get our head in the way that creates anxiety, tension, fear, and it creates the signals to your body that something's wrong, and the body starts to attack itself. Like the other day, I was doing a biogeometry reading on a friend of mine. She's in her 70s, and she's a meditator. She meditates every day, and all her organs were beautifully balanced. And I'm like, wow, you are amazing. And so there was very little that was out of balance in her body. It's like most people needed about 20, 30 signatures, and she needed 5, and they were small things. It was just like nothing doing with the organ. And that was a tribute to that mind-body connection. And for those listening, I think that if you really want to dive into these realms, start with meditation. Get your mind to quiet. When you quiet your mind, then you can start to hear again. You can start to feel again. You can start to sense again. And then that whole world opens up to you. And it's not easy. I remember when I first started meditating, it was like, oh, I learned about this meditation thing. All these successful people I knew were meditating. It was hard for me because I think like most, it's like there's 2 switches, on or off. It's like I go like hell or fall asleep. And I remember I was in my early 20s, and I'm like, I couldn't even stay awake in a movie because the minute I sat down and started like, oh, it must be sleep time. And I'm like, if I can't stay awake in a movie when I'm 20, imagine when I'm like 80, right? So I was like, so I recognized that this was important. And it took me months before I could actually sit still for 20 minutes to meditate. But I just stuck with it every day. I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this until my mind and my body stopped fighting it. And I don't know which one was worse. It was just like, okay, we'll do this. And then it's like, it's not that I have to. I get to have this time out in my day. I get to spend 20 minutes in silence to be with myself. And when you switch over that thought that I get to instead of I have to, that's when the magic starts happening. And then next thing I knew, I could meditate for hours on end. I'm like, where was I? I was gone for 2 hours. Whoa, it was powerful. You might find that your listeners will be fighting it at first, and it's just to stick with it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the practices that we do in shamanism is soul retrieval. And in shamanism, they talk about soul loss, where, let's say, someone experiences a trauma, some aspect of their psyche fragments off and gets almost frozen in time, stuck in that trauma, and doesn't develop past that point. And so they might be 45 years old, but there's a 9-year-old fragment that's still stuck in the past. And so I've seen this to be a huge cause of a lot of mental illness, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of ADHD. Because I find what happens is the psyche starts to create a protective system around that fragment, whether it's hypervigilance or ADHD or, like I said, chronic anxiety. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your experience working with soul loss, soul retrieval, and how that has a huge impact on people's mental health.
Yeah, I do a lot of soul retrievals. That's my other specialties. And
Mhm.
basically, any time in a person's life where they felt like they were going to die could be a reason they have soul loss, like a car accident, some significant event where they thought they were going to lose their life. The soul kind of spits out of the body and goes, oh, I don't want to experience that pain. And then it doesn't die. And then that part still stays out of the body. Times in their life where they thought they were going to die or wish they were going to die. So times where you're like, things are so bad, I don't know the end. I can't get out of the situation. It'd be better just to end my life. That feeling, that part of you dissociates from you. We also see at times when they didn't feel like they belonged. So like with family gatherings and stuff, where they feel like an outsider, school events where they just feel like they weren't part of the tribe, that can create soul loss. And also times I always say when they can't stop thinking about it, a time in your life where you keep on going back to, and you're like, my mind just keeps back to that time I was 9 or whatever age it was. That's usually indicating some soul loss. And so the way I like to explain it is it's like kind of like Groundhog's Day. That part of you gets detached and it's reliving that moment day in and day out. So maybe you were physically abused as a child. That there's part of that person. They may be, like you said, 50 years old, but they're still getting physically abused by their father day in and day out. And it's affecting them in the now because there's part of them still there. And so what we do is we energetically go back together. It's kind of like a meditative state I put them in, and we go to that time to talk with that part of them and bring it back into the now. Super healing, because now they can let that part of them rest. That part of them that was agitated, always on, is now relaxed, and they can let go and say, okay, that was my past, and stay in the past. I am in the now. I am safe now. I am no longer in that. And I find that I always start, like you said, the foundation levels. And when that is, there's still something lingering, something's not quite right, their vitality isn't 100% yet. What's holding back? It's usually soul fragments. And we go back and change that can change their world. And I see it instantly. Immediately after a session, they're like, I feel different. I feel something has changed. And that change continues to last. And that's powerful. I was going to write a book on all my stories on that because I've seen so many lives change. And it's so interlinked with, like you said, the environment as well. So our mind and emotions are linked. I always like to share a story about a client I had in England. And she was working with me for a couple of years. And what happened was over time, she was like, I haven't shared with you. I tell people when they're coaching people, it's like unpeeling an onion. They come to you with this problem and you help them solve that problem. And there's an underlying problem, another underlying problem. And usually the deeper ones are the ones who don't want to talk about them. And then all of a sudden they feel safe enough. I'm like, let me share this thing with you. And so this particular client said, I have this anxiety every day at 2 o'clock. And I'm like, what? She goes, that's why I work from home, because at 2 o'clock, I have to take a break. I have to lay down. I can't answer the phone. It just rattles my bones. I've been to counselors, psychologists, been on medication, and it's always at the time. I'm like, that sounds like, either soul loss, but for me, that's also sound like past life. So I also do past life regression. And in that particular case, it was past life where her past life was in the military, got shot down. She was an Air Force pilot. And so when her plane went down, it was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And we were able to see that event and recognize it. And actually, there was soul loss there too, which is the first time I'd seen something like that. It's like, people always say, have you ever seen this? And I never say it's not possible, because just when I say, oh, that doesn't happen, it happens. And so this was like a soul retrieval and a past life regression all in one. And it was like, wow, she fragmented into her past life. And so she was not fully present in this life and had to retrieve that fragment into this life. And in industry, that all her pain went away, and all her anxiety went away. And she was able to function. She never had a problem again. This has been years later. And it was just like that. It was just like we had to bring that fragment back. And another story comes to mind about a lady who had a miscarriage. And when we went back, there can be soul loss, and it can be linked to another soul. So a fetus could be still in your field. And she had bought this tree in her house when she lost the baby, and she planted it in her backyard, and the tree never did good. And the gardener was always saying, cut down that tree. It's not doing well. She's like, no, leave that tree. And he was like, whatever. And so for years, the gardener was like, this tree isn't doing well. And it was her tribute to this child. So she's like, no, that tree stays. And after we did the work, within a week later, the tree starts to flourish. And the gardener knocks on the door and is like, hey, what did you do to this tree? She said, what? And she went out there, and it was full of blossoms for the first time ever in his life. And she's like, I could have told him of all the stuff we did. She's like, oh yeah, I just put some fertilizer in it. She didn't know what to say, because it was so out there what she had done to make this tree come back. But it was that connection to that soul and releasing that soul, and the tree was the connection to that soul. And all of a sudden, this tree was alive and well for the first time ever.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And those are the stories that kind of make things almost undeniable.
Right. It's like, how can you explain that? Here's this tree, never got better. And now we do this work, and a week later, it's healing.
Beautiful. One of the questions that I have for you is, obviously you do a lot of shamanic work, a lot of healing work, and you're also a mother to two beautiful children. And one of the things that I've seen, with my focus being a lot around mental health, is a lot of children and young adults expressing certain symptoms that are being pathologized as like mental illness, whether it's anxiety or even sometimes like schizophrenia and things like that. And a lot of times they'll come to me, and I'll get this intuitive sense that they actually carry a lot of psychic gifts, and they're actually existing at a vibrational state on a soul level that they haven't yet really integrated into their physiology, into the nervous system. And so it's almost like the symptoms of mental illness are actually symptoms of spiritual awakening.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing this more and more in young people. So I'm really curious, as a shaman and as a mother, what have you seen? What have you sensed in terms of some of what we're seeing with younger children or young adults that's actually a little bit more of a spiritual crisis than a mental illness?
Yeah, they say in mental hospitals, most of the patients are actually shamans that don't know it, and so they don't have a place in society, and they think, oh, they're crazy, let's just put them away. But their voices in their head are actually real, and the things they're seeing are actually happening at a different frequency. And so they're like, this must be crazy. But yeah, no, it's really valid. And nowadays, I think we're seeing a lot more children with these gifts because the world needs them. We need to shift gears. We need to change our mindset. We need to start looking deeper. And so we're seeing a lot of them, as I think they were called indigo children for a while. And, there's just vibrational children that are showing up, rainbow children, and all these things are coming in. And I think that there isn't really a place for them, which is kind of a sad thing, because if they don't have someone who's doing the kind of work, that could be a very scary situation for a child, where they might actually experience soul loss. And I have actually seen in my work that powerful people often are exposed to entities or dark forces at a young age because they want to off-center them before they notice what their gifts are. And I'm like, wow, this person was attacked energetically because of they knew that this person had the gift to do such and such. And so I think that I wish there was more guidance for all these children, because if they stepped into their power at a young age, they wouldn't be off-roading, because these kids go into drugs, into medications, all sorts of things. They might self-medicate because they don't know how to react or fit into society. And if they have to realize, hey, you are actually here with a big mission. You came here with a lot of knowledge, and you need to ground yourself and learn about what it is to be human so you can share that. The world would be so different.
Yeah. And so what would your advice, recommendation, or guidance be for parents that have young children that might be carrying some of these gifts, but either they don't know it or their parents are not aware of it? What would you advise in terms of how to raise children that are carrying some of these gifts, but also might be expressing symptoms of anxiety or things that could potentially be pathologized?
Yeah, at first I would say don't poo-poo it. Like a lot of times parents are like, oh, there's no person there. That's just an imaginary friend. That's not make believe. Open your heart and say, well, tell me about this little person, or what is it that they're saying, and validate that whatever they're saying or feeling is real, and see what they share with you. If a child feels safe, they'll share more, and you might find like, oh my gosh, they're talking to my grandmother. It might be find out that they're actually very valid, but you don't take the time because you're like, I don't have time for this. They're acting crazy. I also feel like limiting their social media, the screens, that creates way too much bother in the child. All children, whether how gifted they are, they're all affected by social media. My kids go to a Waldorf school, and we have times where we zero media for a whole month. I can see a significant difference in my child when they're not on a screen. When they go back to seeing a screen, even if it's just a little bit, like they don't watch TV Monday through Thursday, and it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday only in small amounts, but I can see a change in them from the weekend. It's like they immediately can't do simple tasks. They can't think about what shoes to wear. They can't get themselves dressed. They're agitated. It's overwhelming to do simple tasks around the house. As soon as we take away the screen, wow, they're fully capable of doing all these things. So I think part of it is too much stimuli. So they're getting stimulated on these different dimensions and being overstimulated in the screen. And it's just too much for a small child because they haven't
Yeah.
fully come into their body. Like at the Waldorf school, they talk about it. It takes usually 7 years for a soul to fully get into a human being. And they do testing to see when they're ready to go into first grade, because if they're not fully in the body, they stay and play in kindergarten until they're ready. And often we're like, oh, you're 5 years old, go into first grade right away. That's because let's teach you how to read and do all this stuff. It's like, what's wrong with letting them play for a couple more years? So Waldorf says, wait till they're 7 till they go to first grade. Why are we rushing life? Why are we rushing them into thinking and doing all these things? So get them to spend more time in nature. I think that's a key thing, is get them away from all the buzz, and you'll see that's going to have significant effects. Take out all the additives, chemicals, preservatives, dyes in the food. That's going to change your child. And then, seek help. Find someone who is maybe a holistic lifestyle coach, or someone who has these skills that I do. Find someone who can help them and maybe connect to their child and help them understand what they're going through.
Yeah, beautiful. And so, Angie, thank you so much. It's such an incredible conversation. And so, if people would like to learn more about your work, or they're interested in some coaching with you, where would you like to direct them?
Let's give them my Angie at checkinstitute.com address. I get a lot of email, and so I always tell people, if they email me and I don't respond within a week, email me again, because it's typical. I have over 20,000 emails in my mailbox at a time. I thought about hiring someone, but people send me such confidential information. Like when we do soul retrieval, they tell me about their most significant events. It's not something I can trust another person with. So I'm like, I have to do my emails myself because of the content that's in there. So email me. If I don't get them, email me again. You can also reach out to me on social media. I don't check all the time. I'm not on social media all the time, but I do go into Facebook, so Messenger or Instagram. I do check that every once in a while. So those are other ways they can connect to me.
Beautiful. Any parting messages that you'd like to share?
Oh, my favorite thing to tell people is just be you. Everybody else
Mm,
taken. And I
Beautiful.
love to share the story I like to give is about if you were a peach tree grower and you had the most beautiful peaches on the planet and you grew just beautiful peaches. Inevitably, there's someone who just doesn't like peaches. Don't spend your life trying to convince them to like peaches when there's so many people who love peaches. Find your people, find your tribe, be you, and watch the magic happen.
beautiful. Angie, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're welcome. It's great to be here.